Yep,
Ayun,
we're
yeah,
live.
we're live. We're live again for another episode of HR Shouts and Whispers. Siyempre, dami na naman natin pag-uusapan ngayon and ang topic natin ngayon is, tama ba Chris? How can we prepare our workplace to be more inclusive of diversity? Right? Okay. Siyempre, my name is Ken Somera and ang main host natin is Cristina Reclamado. Hi Chris.
Hi, Ken. So we have a very young guest. So you know her
Yay.
because she's been having talks about gender, inclusivity, and diversity. Okay, but we're going to talk more on that. Okay, because people are always curious. Okay, culture and how to be inclusive. Okay, and then when we do our hiring practices, oh, dito sa Pilipinas, diba, you're always asked your age. So there, and then sometimes it could, tread on the some stuff that are taboo. We don't know, it's still acceptable here in the Philippines, but in some countries when you ask those questions, they're kind of taboo. So our very young guest, and she's everywhere. I see her because, and I also like her topic. We have Elizha Corpuz. Hi, Elisha.
Hi everyone. I love being introduced as a very young guest. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for having me here. I think I don't know if I told you already, Christina, but really having Facebook groups like these can really help out people who like me did not really start their career in the Philippines. And so this is just a really good way to see the community and to be part of it really quickly. So thank you so much. Really appreciate pockets of the internet like this one.
And it's, Ken and I appreciate that you said yes to our invitation. Okay, so you really set out to be in HR. So I'll ask you if is HR really a career that you chose for yourself or napilitan ka lang?
Yeah, you know what? I get that question a lot. And I think my background is a little unique because I actually grew up around HR. So, yung mom ko, after she did her undergrad, she actually did a master's in HR. She didn't finish because she had me. So she had to stop
Mm-hmm.
school. But she's very immersed in that topic. And my dad, until now, is still in HR. So our dinner conversations are always about people and organizations. So it's something that I grew into. And then you can say it's the family business. Pero after
Mm-hmm.
a while, I found my own reasons for loving it. Like you can see organizations have so much potential for impact. And if you are able to connect organizations with society, that's just really where you can make magic happen. So ever since then, I've just set my path towards that HR trajectory, and I'm here now.
So your first job was not here in the Philippines, okay?
No.
So it
Mhm.
was in Michigan, USA. Is
In so
that correct?
actually I went to school. I went to school in Michigan State. So first I did my undergrad here in the Philippines. So dito naman
Mm-hmm.
ako lumaki. Sa
Mm-hmm.
Philippines ako nag-undergrad in UP Diliman. I did psychology. And then afterwards, I did my master's in human resources in Michigan State University. And then I thought I was going back home, but I got a job offer for Microsoft. So I lived in Seattle, Washington, and worked in
Mm-hmm.
the headquarters.
Okay, so that's quite an interesting twist of events for you, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so okay, let's ask your experience. Okay, so when you were working there, when you went, what was the culture? How was the culture, and how different is the practice of HR in the US? Because I think you have FMLA. Am I correct?
Yeah, all these different laws like employment at will, etc.
Yes, it's
Mhm.
like very it's a lot of jargon, okay? Because I'm also a member in another community. That's for I don't know. I just like want to be a member. I just joined community. So
Yeah.
this one was based in the US, and I see all this jargon, okay? And then the questions that they're asking, they're similar to the questions that are being asked here, okay, by our HR practitioners. So how was it? How was your experience? So your interview, how was your interview?
You know what? I think in terms of laws, they do have laws that are implemented, I would say, a little bit more strictly than we
Mm,
do. And I think that's why you'll find that in those communities you're in, right, Christina, you'll find that there are lots of jargon here and there because they do have to pay attention to these things. Because if they don't, then they can get sued. And if you look at the legal environment in the US, applicants and potential employees actually, you would find that they do sue. They do take legal recourse for these things. I think dito sa Philippines, parang hindi tayo masyadong maganon as a culture. We don't actually get into a lot of effort to sue employers or potential employers. But over there, you would find that they actually try to take the legal route if they think that they have grounds for it. So I think that's why organizations and HR people specifically are just more attuned, and they kind of make more sure that they follow whatever the law says.
so let's define suing because here, okay,
Mhm.
people have been for this period alone. Okay, I know that people have been filing complaints at
Mhm.
the Department of Labor and Employment. Okay, here in the Philippines. But when you say sue, they actually will hire a lawyer, and then they will privately, on their own capacity, sue the company, right?
Yes, so that's what I mean. And also, of course, the filing complaints with the
Mm,
Department of Labor, that's also a thing. But
mm,
if you look at like culturally, we know that in the US, outside of labor, they do have more, I would say, they they tend to sue people
mm.
more. Yun yung easiest way to explain.
They're very well. The culture is different because people are
Mm-hmm.
more vocal and then they're a little bit aggressive. So I think that's
So
the
you get it.
culture. That's the
Yeah.
mindset. Yes. See, Ken, your wife used to work in the States, right? Ken,
Dubai, yeah, Dubai.
Dubai. Okay,
Dubai,
different
Dubai, yeah.
country.
Mm.
Yeah.
So how is it there? How is the work environment in Dubai?
I'm not really sure as of the moment, but when she was working there, there of course there are lots and lots of Filipinos there working,
Right.
of course, and okay naman daw yung work environment lalo na dun sa pinagtatrabahuhan niya. It's very nice naman. Yeah.
Okay, and then in also what I get is from the conversations there, like when you have to file for sick leave, I think the Department of Labor of the U.S. or of the state has to be notified as well. Is that correct?
Mm. You know what? I'm not exactly sure, but I would say when it comes to benefits like that, like leaves and whatnot, you would find that. And I also can't speak in general because
Mm,
industry wise, it can really vary. I was very lucky that I was in the tech industry. And I
mm.
think we know just from reading the news and everything that in general in the tech industry they are more generous about these things, so you would find that maybe my experience of the US work life and US HR life could be very different from other people in other industries kasi nga in the tech world super dami talagang freedom given to us.
It's the same also in the tech industry here in the
Yeah,
Philippines.
I bet.
Yes, yes. And then how was your experience? So can you tell us? Okay, so you were there for how many years, and
Like
how
two
was
and
it?
a half. Mm-hmm.
2.5, and how was it working with Microsoft?
Yeah, you know what? When I left the Philippines to go and study abroad and to maybe work there, I didn't have any set plans yet at the time. I said that I wanted to experience being in the sausage factory, like where they make the policies, where they make
Mm,
the global courses in learning and development or whatnot.
mm,
Because in a lot of the multinational companies here in the Philippines, we get the sausage already made, right? And then now it's
mm,
about, okay, how do you plate it para it's more customized to the Filipino culture? And
Mhm.
so my goal was I want to see how they make that sausage. And that's really what I got from Microsoft that I appreciate so much. I got to see how policies, processes are being made. I got to see strategy and how it plays connecting many different functions and many different departments. So, yeah, for me, just being able to see that big picture and getting a feel of what that looks like, that I think was the biggest lesson I learned.
Mhm. And so you came back here where did you experience culture shock?
You know what? It's interesting because when I left the Philippines and went to the US, I did not get culture shock at all because it's pretty much the same, right? But
Mhm.
when I came back here and tried to see like, okay, ano yung work culture sa Pilipinas, ganyan, parang mas na culture shock pa ako dito.
Okay, so you are okay focusing on culture, diversity,
Mhm.
and inclusivity. So, what are the top concerns of people who approach you
Hmm.
with regard to those topics?
Yeah. You know what? Here in the Philippines, what I hear from people and what I observe is yes, there are efforts to put inclusion into organizations. There are efforts. So I think we have to be fair and acknowledge that. But what I also hear from some practitioners is sometimes medyo surface level pa siya kasi hindi pa really na-dig into like, okay, what does this mean in terms of unconscious biases? What I hear is most of the time diversity and inclusion is associated with just like gender sensitivity training
Mm-hmm.
or generational differences training. But if you look at how integrated it is into actual like policies, into actual processes, systems, it's not yet integrated. And so I think this is where we get into this sort of really murky waters. Na on the surface, you see activities going on related to diversity and inclusion, but if you look beneath in the layers, parang kulang pa yung connections.
Well, this is an issue now because during this time, a lot of executives and professionals my age. Okay, so I'm 46. Oh, yan. Declare ko na yung
Hey,
age ko,
but you look
46.
36.
Oh, ano yan? Secret yan. Diet yan. Diet and exercise. But what the issue is, okay, so inclusion is not about just gender, okay, it's
Mhm,
about
mhm.
race, it's about gender, age, okay, and then also religion, so ethnicity, okay, so that's what inclusion is. So now you get a lot of during this time you get a lot of ads here in the Philippines, okay, and in other Southeast Asian countries there is a cap on the age, like only up to
Mhm,
35,
mhm.
only up to 40. So how is how is this treated in the US, a country which is known for freedom and liberty, etc.
Yeah, and you know what, I would even add to what you said. Inclusion is also, it could be your preferences in terms of the way you work. It could be your abilities, your work style, your individual realities. And so I think in terms of differences, 'di ba, you're asking ano yung pagkakaiba sa US. You can see that in their perspective, they really are looking at inclusion from a wider lens and putting
Mm,
in more facets into that. Specifically about what you said, like in job postings and even in recruiting, I think because the laws are implemented quite strictly. And so
mm,
employers are very careful about making sure that they don't put anything there that applicants could think might be discriminatory. And it can get really tricky because there are these protected attributes, right? Like what you just said, age. In some states, like Michigan, for example, weight is a protected attribute. So you cannot discriminate a person based on mataba ka ba o mapayat ka ba. And
Ay,
so,
nako, nangyari yan sa akin. Ini-interview ako.
oh,
Parang
really?
beauty pageant. No, I used to be like 200 pounds, okay? Nangyari yan sa akin. Ang sinabi, parang malusog ka ata as an HR
Oh,
person.
okay. As an
But,
HR person, oh, okay. So you
parang
say first
malusog
line
daw
dun, di
ako.
ba? Yeah.
Oo, parang sabi ko, ha? Parang connected pa yun sa skill.
Yeah, and so it's these protected attributes that in the US they're very careful about putting in the example you gave, like job ads, for
Mhm.
example.
So, ito kasi, they think, okay, there are some people who say that, okay, well, by the way, because I have a thyroid problem, my weight can really like swing from the,
Ah,
from minimum to maximum. Yeah, it's like fluctuating. Okay. So there was a time I was like 203 pounds. Okay. Not just 200 pounds. So I went to an interview as a consultant. Bilang napansin, oh, malusog ka ata as an HR. Ano. Parang, naman, syempre, we just let it slide. Okay. Diba? Swabe lang. Pero, when you think about it, those things in the US, they're known to be really meticulous,
mm-hmm.
okay, with those comments, okay. So you might think they're like overly sensitive, okay, but you know they have laws that support that. So
Yeah.
what were so what other things that are taboo, okay, to ask during an interview or to even mention to an employee?
Mm. You know what? One of the, I guess, the top examples that always come to mind for me is yung asking for pictures when it comes to applying for a job. Because, right, like what I told you earlier, my first job was in the US. And so going through rounds of applying for companies in the US, I never had to give a picture, a one by one ID picture. Like, I had none of that. And then when I came back home to the Philippines, I tried applying to some jobs. Like, I did not go and dive into consulting immediately. And I was so surprised because I was being asked for a picture with my resume. And then at first, so parang at first nag-rebel muna ako and didn't give my picture. Like, I was trying to see, will they ask for it or is it okay? But they were asking for it. So I'm like, wow, I'm so surprised. That's a thing. In the States, I mean, there's really no law that says you cannot ask for a picture, but because there are all these attributes that are protected, like race, which you can see in a picture, and so to be more on the safe side, then they don't ask for a picture until they need to. Let's say, for
Mhm.
example, you're further along in the hiring process.
Yes. Yeah, I remember also there are like I had many adventures when I was like heavier. Okay, so there was even one time because what I do, I'm also an ESL and I do that part-time. So there was like there was like a Chinese company. Okay, they wanted to see my look first. So they wanted to see, can you take a picture of yourself and then we will tell you if you're hired or not? Because their
Oh.
English is quite basic,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And they're kind of, when they phrase it, it's really like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when I took a selfie, okay? Siyempre nag-eyeliner pa ako, nagkilay pa ako. Okay? And then when I took selfie, okay, so I made sure naman that lighting was okay. But I was like really heavy. So when they saw it, they said, we will not hire you because you're
Mm.
on the heavy side.
That is so interesting because, like, I gave the example of Michigan, right? Where weight
Uh,
is a protected attribute. Like, if you did that in a place where weight is a protected attribute, and let's say, for example, you felt like they did not hire me because of my weight, and you have enough proof of that, then you can win your case.
Ito talaga nilagay niya sa ano, talagang kasi we were chatting on
Mhm.
Messenger, so nilagay talaga niya. So parang ako naman, parang I just try to understand that maybe
Yeah.
they cannot really word it in a very
Hmm.
neutral way because the vocabulary is limited,
Yeah,
etc.
yeah. That's the
Pero
tricky
natawa
part,
lang
di
ako.
ba?
So
Mm-hmm.
sabi ko, ipunin ko to. Okay, so when I do my FB Live, I will talk about it.
Yeah, it's, I guess, like, it's tricky because, again, these, you can fight against these things in the US because the law says it's a protected attribute. Here in the
Mm,
Philippines, let's say like that happens to you na hindi ka na hire kasi sinabihan ka na your weight, we do not take people of your weight. Pero the job naman, let's say it's not related. I don't think there's like legally you can say na weight is a protected attribute. Like there's nothing like that you can say. And so medyo mahirap to go and do the next level of fighting that remark that was said.
here kasi, like, it's a little, the laws are a little bit loose. I mean, loosely followed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when you actually become a victim of discrimination and any other or and other
Mm-hmm.
forms of discrimination, there it's really hard to prove, and then you have a tendency to just let it
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah. Tapos culturally pa, di ba, dyan papasok yung, pero sanay ka namang sinasabihan ng mga tita na mataba, di ba? And so it's like,
Sabihan ka pa ng tita mo,
yeah.
eh mataba ka naman talaga.
So it's like there's so many factors that really make it very different.
Well, anyway, so I cannot, I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name correctly, okay, but one of the early joiners in this FB Live discussion, okay, so we have Miss Eka Aquino, okay, so she's commenting, there's a huge gap between practice of diversity of HR
My God.
in Manila versus practice of it in the provinces. Although, as compared before, I can now see efforts of our fellow HR practitioners to reach out in order to work hard
Mhm.
hand in hand. So, for us to create an engaging and healthy working environment. So, it's a harsh truth, okay, that, okay, so we think that there's something wrong or it's still limited in Manila, but it's all, well, more so in the provinces, okay,
Mhm.
because it really just feels like you have to open yourself to knowledge. When during my time, okay, I didn't get HR because it was just limited to labor relations during my time. I took something more liberal, okay, that can make me sample a lot of fields. So I was in
Mhm.
Masco, yes. So, but it was like my electives were in HR, and it was like interesting because as the field grew, and because of technology also, so knowledge became it's easily accessible. So people it opened people's
Mhm.
minds.
Mhm. That is so true. I think if I look back at what I wanted to learn when I left, it was really that. I wanted to learn the different practices, not necessarily to bring them back here and make everyone change, right? Like, of course, you have to respect the culture that you're in. But for me, it was more of, I want to see how it's done in another way. And I think the more we have that in our toolbox, then the more we can kind of adjust our practices and see what works, what doesn't work.
Yes. And okay, so we so if you are going into like an agenda that will include diversity and
Mm.
inclusion, okay, in your own organization, so what are the basic elements, okay, to do it right?
Okay, so I think if you look at basic elements, maybe I'll bucket it into three things. So, number one, of course, you have to make sure that there's diversity there, meaning you look at your employees and they are a mix of people with different backgrounds. And we don't just mean gender, also look at people from all kinds of social classes, from all kinds of backgrounds. I know dito sa Philippines, medyo popular pa yung certain schools lang yung pwede na kuhanin, right? Or kapag hindi ka dun sa school na yun, out na yung application mo. So, practices like that could be excluding people of certain status or certain experiences. And so what you want is a diverse employee base. And that's really because your customers are diverse. And so you want your employees to also have those perspectives. You're
Okay,
laughing,
speaking of
Christina.
which, because like I graduated from the top
Mhm.
three, the so-called top three, and you did. Okay, that's why I'm smiling.
Yeah,
Oh,
and
good.
it's true, diba? I still hear that from friends who are practicing in the field na medyo may it's a little bit better now, to be fair, but medyo may ganun pa ring perspectives and stereotypes. So that's the first one. Just make sure before you get into inclusion, you do have a diverse mix in your employee. And then number two, I think look at the culture. And by that, I really mean it's when people feel that they belong, when they feel like they can be themselves in that organization. And I do know that's a little touchy feely, right? It's hard to measure. But there are ways to look into that, like look at your employee morale surveys. That's like I think, the easiest, lowest effort where you can get that kind of information. And part of having that culture is having leadership support. So another data that you could probably see is look at the leadership in your company. How many of them even know what diversity and inclusion is? How many of them would like to talk about it and are willing to put work into that? So that's what I mean by culture. And then I guess the third element here is it has to be in the policies. It cannot just be left as we feel this way, or like ganito talaga dito pero hindi naman nakasulat sa manual or whatever that is. And so I think to have a truly inclusive environment, these norms, these policies have to be written up, and so that they can be practiced and people are held accountable against them.
Mhm. So it's just like not lip service, like, oh yeah, we champion,
Exactly.
gender
Mhm.
diversity or equality, or we treat our, the female employees right. It's not like that. It's,
Mhm.
having it in the policies. Like, for example, in just an example, okay, like in a remote setup, okay. So this one, okay, you have to make sure that everyone can do things remotely.
Mhm.
So that's an example, because nobody should be left behind. Everyone should be included, right?
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally. So that's one of the reasons why uh, you should be also giving some leeway, like, internet allowance. Okay, it's just not like a business decision, but it's because you want everyone to be able to do the job. Okay, and
Mhm.
equal opportunity to everyone to do the job, especially during the pandemic.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. And I think, especially with the situation we are in now, you could definitely see a lot of factors of diversity coming into play. And a lot of companies have had to grapple with all these changes. And so I think it's putting diversity and inclusion as part of whatever policy that is. So, for example, if they say this is our work from home policy, our remote work arrangement, or whatever that is, we have to intentionally say that, hey, how do we build inclusion into this? And then put that into writing. I think it's also being able to tie that thread in. Like, you don't
Mhm.
just expect people to feel included because you do certain things. It's also messaging that we are doing these things because we want inclusion to happen. So parang meron din siyang element of intentional and explicit integration.
Yes, like
Yeah.
it's like under, it's embedded within the
Mm-hmm.
system,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Yun. Kasi like some people would say, oh, kailangan wag tayong, kasi there was like an issue before. I think you were not here yet, or I don't know if you're here, about the issue about separate CR
For
for
women,
trans
trans
women.
women, yeah.
Yeah, so there was an issue like a year ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that came to surface, okay. But it's inclusion, diversity. It's more than that issue.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's not just, I think gender is the most famous one that pops up,
Mhm.
especially here in the Philippines. Kasi, diba,
Mhm.
we know that from a country perspective, there are even laws that people are still trying to push for and talking about. So medyo matunog siyang issue. Kaya I think gender yung pinaka perception natin of diversity and inclusion.
So that's why that's one of the like the reasons why we wanted to have this discussion on the culture of inclusion,
Mhm.
because at this time, okay, it's not just like a gender. Well, everyone's affected. Okay, so
Yes, yes.
everyone's affected. So we want to be so this discussion hopefully okay can shed some light and open some minds of management okay what inclusion is, because I been also researching what inclusion is, and then there are some companies okay for the pandemic. Okay, so for example, okay, like during a meeting, okay, your internet lags, so the meeting stops temporarily and waits for that person to rejoin.
Mm.
So we don't really like go through it with just make him catch up. Okay, so they still wait for that person to rejoin the meeting. So that's how they practice inclusion.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a perfect example because I think in terms of misconceptions, right? We think that diversity and inclusion has to be a program or like it's a training. One of
Mhm.
the misconceptions here is if we want a D&I initiative, magpa-training ka ng gender sensitivity. Yun na yun. But it's more than that. Exactly what
Mm,
you said. It's the everyday practices, the everyday norms that
mhm,
push forward for inclusion.
mhm. So that's why thank you for being our guest and being able to clarify those things. Okay, Ken, do we have reactions from our viewers?
Yeah, wala pa namang questions. Pero yeah, we have likes. Thank you, yeah, sa mga people watching. If you have any questions, again, feel free to comment in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I'll ask you because this issue also we talked about it during the week. So there are some because of the overall exasperation and frustration of people. So they have taken to social media again and then ranting, etc.,
Mm.
etc. So how did Microsoft view postings against the company? Like if you're ranting against the company, did they have a policy on that?
You know what, with these things, of course, there are policies, but also, and this is probably something that you can find in the tech industry in general. We always say that you're an adult, so I will treat you like an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to posting things on Facebook, you know what? Access whatever site you want. Like our computers didn't have, big security
Firewalls.
blocks. Yeah, no firewalls or anything. Because they say if you're an adult, then do what an adult does. Practice critical thinking, know what you're
Mm,
posting, know what you're accessing. So of course, policy-wise, they're covered. Like, merong mga nakasulat. But my point here is it's telling people that I trust you to act
mhm,
in the best way that will represent you and the company in the best light possible. And I think it's messaging that na alam mo na yan, isipin mo yan, kaya mo yang isipin. I think that's the special sauce that also makes people feel empowered to
mhm.
then think about what do I say, what do I not say.
Yeah, because there are like conflicting schools of thoughts here in the
Mhm.
practice of HR in the Philippines. Okay, so kasi it depends kasi how the dominant I don't know the dominant the owner the ethnicity of the owner. Okay, so in some companies such as like Southeast Asian ethnicity, like example. mm, Chinese, okay, they're more autocratic, okay,
Yeah.
and then you have like a Japanese boss. It's also more rigid. Okay. Although I've worked with a lot of Japanese companies and they're also trying to be more flexible.
Mhm.
But okay, they do have that policy, okay, about social media postings.
Yeah, and you know what? I think as an HR person, then what realistically what you have to make sure of is have a baseline of a policy, right? Para you're covered whatever happens. But also try to start building messaging and culture around this idea of we trust you to do the right thing or we trust you to do what's best for yourself and what's best for the company. And of course, it's not going to be overnight na pag sinabi mo, maniniwala na lahat ng tao. It's something that takes time and it takes practice. But connecting that back to inclusion now, right? This is also part of creating an inclusive environment. It's telling people that I accept you for who you are and you for your different beliefs or whatever that is. And so, because I respect you, I also trust that you respect me and our company, and you're not going to do anything that will put us in danger or put us in the bad public eye. So yeah, I think it's really just it's a lot of things, but think about beyond policies. Think of the
Mhm.
human that you're dealing with and how do
Mhm.
you empower them to create an environment where yes, they know their responsibilities and also they represent the company in the best way possible.
So does like will it pay, like for example there is a, well, there's a group of people, okay, tasked to maybe calibrate the communication culture. So how can like local companies, okay, since they're grappling with, the issue of culture, what can be done? So like just some free advice on, how to start.
I think number one, it's always know what you're dealing with. So get
Mhm.
some sort of assessment in place. Of course, there are assessments that are, harder to make because you have to like take years and not naman years, but you have to really go into the stats of everything and create your own calibrations, etc. But I would
Mhm.
say in reality, I know sa mga HR wala tayong ganong time and we don't necessarily have the budget to go through all of that. So, you know what? The easiest thing you can do is go back to your employee morale surveys. If you already have it, use that data, know what pain points people are feeling or going through. Beyond your surveys, take the time to do interviews and focus group discussions. You can get so much rich data out of that. So, siguro, as a first piece of advice, focus on getting the data you need and really looking at what is happening. What are my employees experiencing? And then number two, if you're serious about doing this whole culture transformation, putting inclusion into the culture, find a leader who will help sponsor you. In reality, you need your bosses to support this. And so the best solution here is to find kahit that one person in your senior leadership team who believes these values. Align this project with their values so they can see why they have to be involved. And then if you get them as a sponsor, it'll help you to move things forward. So that's the realistic answer. Tapos siguro as a third answer, recognize that you do not have all the answers. And so
Mhm.
make sure that you're forming a group beyond just you, beyond just HR people. Form a group with many different perspectives, with many different departments, many different facets of diversity, para you have that richness of thought and you recognize that it's from that richness where you will really get wins in terms of your company culture.
Okay, so another comment here is Korean bosses. Okay, so with from Miss Aquino again. Okay, Korean bosses sometimes when they finally have made up their mind. Okay, so it's hard to bend it. Okay, so that's why it has to be about gaining the trust of the management first before implementing rules and policies in a certain organization.
Yeah, hard truths, but I think as HR practitioners, we do know that part of being a more strategic HR partner is building that relationship with our leaders. So, yeah,
Mhm.
I totally agree.
So if you were to hire, okay, so if you were the HR and you were to hire someone, okay, so what what will you be looking for in that perspective hiring?
Hmm. So, pinaka-important is you know the job you're hiring for. Make sure
Mhm.
that, diba, we know this. Job descriptions are very important. But in practice, we know that sometimes hiring managers don't write the best job descriptions. And so,
So they don't get the
let's
right
be real.
applicants.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, I think if I were an HR person and I will be hiring someone, I just need to make sure first na yung basis nung hiring ko is it's solid. So I look at that job description first and make sure that I have the basis covered. I know why a certain qualification is listed on there. So that's where I will start, and from there just make sure you're screening people in versus screening people out and excluding them very early on in the process.
So would you recommend, okay, because actually this is something that I used to do, but I stopped it now because I realized that I was just nitpicking, okay, but this one I used to, what I do was I used to like stalk people on Facebook, okay. So would you recommend that we do that?
Here's my thing. If you don't really have to, like if it's not related to anything that you're hiring for, try to stop yourself from doing it. And that's only because you can never be fully objective. That's just the reality, right? We're humans. We can never be fully objective. But you want to give yourself, as the HR person, as many chances as possible to be objective. So,
Mm.
of course, you can do it your own way. But my advice is try not to do it first. And then, if the person is further along the hiring process, then you know what? Maybe it's okay because also LinkedIn is very popular, and there are pictures on LinkedIn, and so it's a little bit of there's not really a hard and fast rule. It's just know yourself and know how you think, then see like how that affects your process.
So nicely put, okay? So this is like guarding yourself from bias, okay?
Mhm.
Because there's not really a tendency. Because if when I was doing it, I had a tendency to like judge people
Oo,
based on what
totoo
they.
talaga. Yeah.
I mean, I'll just be honest that when because there was a time, okay, because a mentor also did that, okay, and then so, diba, might be a good idea to look at the Facebook of this Facebook page of this person. And then, like, we were not accomplishing our goal, okay, which was to look, first is we had like it was like too long of a, vacancy. Okay. It's too tedious. The process was too tedious. We qualified, okay, and then we were able to do phone interviews, and then we were stalking them on Facebook, and then we were comparing what we saw on Facebook, and that got me thinking that's not a good way because the person doesn't even know that we're looking at
Yeah.
his Facebook page.
If you really had to look into a social media account, I would suggest LinkedIn muna.
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Facebook, that's an unguarded moment, okay, and
Mm-hmm.
it's not part of the criteria unless there are applications really. Okay, so I've worked with other also multinational companies. So there are some, okay, that are US based,
Mm-hmm.
and they do make you list down the URL of your Facebook account. But at
Yeah.
least that's like
Mm-hmm.
inferred na yon na they're going to check. They might, okay, if they
Yep.
have the time.
And the good thing about that is you're self-reporting your account. So
Hmm.
you know, and you're giving them, if you put your URL there, you're kind of giving them permission to go ahead and check. Versus
Yes.
kapag you're a recruiter and no one gave you permission to look, pero you're looking and for no reason at all. Iba yun.
Okay. Okay, so let's ask Ken because Ken, yeah, is in a it's like a similar field, a cousin, okay, of
Mhm.
hiring, okay, the dating scene, okay, because because like
Grabe.
dating, hiring, kind of similar, okay.
So I've heard.
Okay, so when people look at the Facebook, so first, okay, are your clients, okay, so they're actually obviously, okay, looking for a partner, so you do advise them to work on their Facebook page.
Not just the Facebook, of course, general, how they
Mm,
present themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So from pictures, most of the time, yung mga clients that ask in regards to dating, their lack of self-confidence then. So no pictures to show, iba-iba, karamihan, group pics. So it becomes a challenge, lalo na if we have to look for a picture for Tinder. or for
Mhm.
OkCupid, di ba? Kasi syempre, hindi mo naman pwede ilagay group pics doon. Di ba? Maraming factor. Unless if you're with an animal or a dog, pwede. Di ba? Pero pwede yun. Pero yun nga, it becomes a challenge. So malaking factor yung pag-ayos talaga ng profile. Yeah,
Mm.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I would say even for applicants, because I used to be in Michigan State, I was a career coach. So we would make sure that people cleaned up their act. They had everything lined up, and that just gets them ready for whatever the companies do, like whether they check the Facebook or not. And so from the applicant side naman, it always pays to be more on the sure side, right? Like what
Mhm.
si Ken was saying, put your best foot forward. Like if you're on Facebook, make sure, like, you're putting things there that you are proud of and that you think it's okay for people to see you in that way.
Hmm.
Well, it's about like private and public,
Mm-hmm.
spheres. Okay. So
Yeah.
when you want people to see you publicly, so what do you do? I think you to dress up. Kami nga ni Ken dito, nagsha-shout, naliligo pa eh. Parang Facebook.
Bago bago mag ano,
Ayun. parang,
bago mag-start
parang
yung live,
fresh.
maliligo.
As if
Yeah.
naaamoy.
Yan yung strategy. Basta bago mag-live, kailangan ligo muna. Pagdating mo, basa pa yung buhok mo. Uy, Chris, basa pa yung buhok.
That connotes, okay, because like we want to have an atmosphere na cool and light. So pag bagong ligo, masaya.
Yeah, ganda pa yung
Fresh na
energy.
fresh.
Oo.
I don't know. It contributes to, especially ngayon, okay? So, sabi nga ni Habi, ito na, just some, trivia lang. Oh, parang twice a day ka na maligo ngayon. Kasi I have like a block schedule in the morning and block schedule in the afternoon. Sabi niya, kasi parang fresh eh. Parang mas masaya ang discussion with the client, with the student. Okay. I don't know. Okay. But really, what I do, okay. And then, this is a lot of people have asked me, okay, should I rant? Should I? You know what? If you really must rant, okay, what you do is when you click, right, Facebook will ask you, only friends will see.
Mm-hmm.
Share to public, okay? So you have to be careful what to click there. Okay, if
Yeah.
you must.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's the thing. If you do want to make it public because you are sure that that's who you are, I think for me, it's really more of, are you ready for people to see you in that way? And then, just know that if a company sees this and for them, it's a no, then maybe you're not a good fit for them. So it's really about, be clear about yourself. Ano ba yung okay sa'yo na makita ng iba? Or sino ka ba? And who do you want to present to the world? Because
Yeah,
if
your presentation
yeah,
of yourself.
sometimes we say rants, but you know what? They're not always rants. Maybe this is like a really nicely worded, almost like an essay that really talks about your values as a human being. And for me, when I read things like that, I admire the people because they're so eloquent about their values. So it's really up to you and ano yung perception na gusto mo about
Well,
you.
I encourage my
Mhm.
students to do that actually because it kind of practices their writing skills.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah. So I like because like syempre nag-evolve tayo. There was a time, okay, I didn't like, okay, when Facebook was new, I was like a little bit, I didn't want to share anything of myself, okay? I would just share like malabo pa yung picture ko nun. Okay, and then timid pa, okay. And then and then as through the years, you evolve with your use of social media. And yeah, so Elisha said that, okay, so it's about how you want to present yourself to the world. Okay, so we will respect that, okay. And then maybe you were not hired because you were not a fit to the organization.
Mhm. Yeah, and think of it this way, in terms of inclusion, right? You want to be where you can be who you are. And so maybe that's a sign that you cannot be your full self with that company. And then another company comes along that accepts you and celebrates you for all of your thoughts. So then you're a good fit because you can be your full self there.
Yes. So that's a good way of looking at also rejection, because a lot of people, like when they, get the reject. So this is it, okay? With HR, okay, it's always you're not okay, damned if you do, damn if you don't. Okay, so
True.
if you give a rejection letter, okay, so it gives the applicant a chance to talk back to you. Okay, why didn't you, etc., etc. But if you don't give a rejection letter, so they'll say dead man naman yung
You
company, ano
ghosted
ba yan?
me. Yeah.
Okay, but it's still proper to send a rejection letter or a nicely worded rejection letter, so
Mhm.
that. Mhm.
Yeah, look at it from an inclusion perspective, right? Like what I said, everything is about integrating inclusion into all of your processes. So if you do send a rejection letter, that's another way of saying that, hey, maybe you're not a good fit here, but I respect you as a human being. I respect you
Mm.
enough to tell you that you're not in and I'm rejecting you. So it's really about how do you want your company to show that they are truly inclusive kahit in the little things.
Actually, I've collected like a lot of rejection letters through the years. I mean, it's not as if like, when I go to an interview and I get accepted right away. Okay. That's why I can coach, okay, how to get hired for an interview.
Mhm. It takes
Yeah, but
experience. Yeah.
diba? To fail, okay? But,
Mhm.
there are like a lot. You see that when you get a nicely worded, regrets letter, okay, it says about the company's culture and their practices within the company.
Mhm.
So that's why when we talked about, so integration is the key word here, okay? So don't just like go into and create a policy because it's being talked about in social media. Okay, you think about your practices within your organization. Okay, and you integrate. Okay, those agendas. Okay, like
Yeah.
right now, yeah, examples of it. Okay, can be diversity and inclusion. That's an agenda. And then, because since we're on work from home, okay, you can also have an agenda of integrity,
Mhm. Mhm.
like, self-management, and then just admitting mistakes, okay, not hiding them, etc. So that's part of culture also.
Yeah, yeah. All of these, think about them as building blocks that
Mm.
add up to each other. I get this question a lot because I do say that my specialty area is culture transformation, right? And so people say, okay, what do I need to do so I can get the culture I want? And then it's like, whoa, wait, I can't answer that in one go because this is many, many different building blocks. And the blocks depend on what it would be for your company. Like, have you even defined what that culture is in the first place? So
Mm-hmm.
if you look at diversity and inclusion, these are building blocks that create that culture. And I think what's happening now is we still think of it as like that one thing. It's a separate thing. It's a project. It's an inclusion
Mm.
project. And then it becomes kind of like a check of the box separate thing. Whereas it's not just a project. It's something that actually you can put into all the other functions that are happening in your organization.
Yun nga yun eh. Because a lot of, so I have to say this, okay? And my advance apologies to fellow coaches, okay? Because, okay, there are a lot of webinars right now, okay? So we have here culture, diversity, we have communication, each other. But, people, have to find, it has to, people should realize, or HR practitioners should realize that all of these things are integrated.
Yes. Yeah. So here's the thing, like, go to all these different random webinars. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's one topic, then another topic, then another topic. And our responsibility as HR professionals is to look at what am I learning from all of these things? How do I put them together? And then how do I put them into my company strategy? So when it comes to that special sauce, if you will, that's where
Mm-hmm.
our job and that's really where our expertise as HR people come into play.
So don't just collect all those certificates of attendance, okay? Get how this particular webinar can help you make your practice in that company better.
Yeah.
That's what we're trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
Because like right now it's a hodgepodge of everything, and then even actually there was a time I was like getting this and I wasn't attending this. I was attending because I get also invited to be part to be a viewer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So and then parang nahilo na ako, di ba?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
the human mind can only take so much jargon. Okay. So yon. So what I suggest is that when you go through all these seminars or maybe your notes, so you went through all these seminars, try to see how you're going to integrate it,
Yeah.
and that's how you're going to grow as an HR practitioner.
Yeah, and you know what? It's not about it's not about the quantity of webinars or workshops that you attend. It's really the quality of insights that you get
Mm.
from them and the quality of insights that you yourself create from that.
Yeah, so I
Mhm.
agree. Ken. So Ken also, actually Ken's field of expertise, it's actually related to culture as well. It's NLP because this is like on the individual level,
Mhm.
right? Kasi
Neuro-linguistic
language,
programming. Ah,
conversation, language.
mm,
So
okay naman.
certain labels. Oh, Ken, kasi I don't know if you heard our discussion, yung mataba ako. Sinabi, I'm too
Kanina,
fat as a,
kanina. Yeah,
oh,
I heard
I'm
that.
too fat as sakit. Oh.
Pero ang laki na din kasi ng pinayat mo. The first time we met was like, you were like, for ilang pounds yun?
203 pounds.
Yeah,
Oh, di
200,
ba?
di ba?
Binroadcast ko pa, 203 pounds.
Uh, right
You're
now,
owning it.
it's, yeah,
Yeah.
solid yung diet ni Cristina. Kailangan din namin matutunan yan.
No, kasi what I did it, this is like something I did, so we were forced to work from home, right? So what I did, I just, divided my schedule into like block times,
Mm.
time blocks, Basta, hindi ako pwede kumain ng more than 4 times. And it has to be like a certain
Okay.
portion. Kasi you're going to like overeat, right? Kasi katabi mo lang yung ref eh.
Snacks.
Tama.
The snacks, no, the pantry is just there, and then you have nobody to stop you, Kasi
Just
hindi na,
yourself, no?
oo, just yourself,
Mhm.
and
Dali pa
then
order. Dali pa
oo,
order.
madali pa. So that's what I did. Okay. So it's something that I had to bring a little bit of office culture into my home so that everything is organized.
Mhm.
Yun lang ginawa ko. Yun. Kaya yung asawa ko medyo na-OOC-han sa akin kasi meron kaming mga schedule. Okay. So how did you adjust to work from home, Ken?
Sa akin, matagal na ako ano naman, work from home. Pero syempre, ang in-adjust ko was the meetings, of course. Kasi almost every week I have to meet people. Makati, QC. Pero I live in the South kasi. So parang nasanay na rin ako bumiyahe pag coding, MRT, di ba? So the adjustment, ano naman, madali naman gawin yung adjustment kasi parang I was already prepared before the pandemic struck because of yun nga I as siguro so previous episodes I told na I had a friend that was always updating us about what's
Mm.
happening with the pandemic. So mga December pa lang we were already, oy guys, ito yung mangyayari so be warned. So kaya very thankful din ako doon. So yung adjustment na-adjust na namin siya bago pa nag-announce ng pandemic kami ng wife ko. So we were already prepared with goods and everything. Tapos yung bahay, ano na namin, parang nakapag-set up na kami ng mga workstations, ganun. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge, okay? Like especially for us, because there was a time, kasi before the pandemic, okay? So our group would have, we could have face-to-face meetings. Like Ken
Mm,
and I would sometimes meet in a cafe, mga ganon.
mhm.
So we had to adjust. So Elisha, how can you maintain that sense of connection when, now that there's like, we still have to, at least 50% of the time we would have to do work from home.
Yeah, you know what? I was actually very lucky because in Microsoft, we could just really work from home anytime. And
Mm,
so if I wanted to work from home, I could. And actually, for most of my stay, my managers have been remote. So I'm really, really used to like not really seeing people face to face, even though I was working there. I think it's just very hard for us now because it's very new. And because
mm,
it's new, we haven't figured out how to translate some of our engagement opportunities into the virtual world. But I think if we get more used to it, then we can find that it does work. There are ways to keep that connection going. It's just the biggest difference is you have to be more purposive about it and you
mm,
have to be more intentional about it. What does that mean? Before, for example, if we were in an in-person meeting, so nasa conference room tayo lahat, di ba? You feel
mm,
connected kasi may kwento-kwentuhan 5 minutes before the
mm,
meeting starts. But now, we're not there physically anymore. So, nawawala yung kwentu-kwentuhan. But my answer there is, bakit kailangan mo wala? You can build that into your meeting and say, hey, if our team meeting is 9 to 10 a.m., 9 to 9:05, we are doing a quick check-in and kwentuhan about how we are. So it's really just building it into the actual process.
mm. Yeah, like small talk or chit chat before the
Mhm.
meeting starts, okay? And then always, naman, we have to end the meetings. It's very important, okay, to have a well-organized meeting. Kasi minsan, I notice because, I teach communication, business communication. Uh, a lot of people, they don't have agendas for the meeting.
Oh, that is one of the things that culture shocked me here.
We'll have a meeting. What is it about? So it's just, it's about
Mhm.
this, it's that. But in with multinational firms, you always have to have an outline for the meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you send a calendar invite to block people's schedules. So that's
Yes.
one of the things I was told that here since dati naman daw parang magkaka-floor naman sila. So hindi masyadong popular yung nagsisend ka ng calendar invite kasi tatawagin mo lang daw like, "Oh, Christina, meeting na tayo." And so now in the pandemic, parang dapat they're getting used to it that they really are trying to intentionally take the time they need from you, but also putting in, like what you said, the right agenda for it. And, going back to inclusion, these practices are being inclusive. So when you respect people's time, when you respect it enough that you're scheduling a meeting with them and sending them an agenda, that little thing is actually already being inclusive. So yeah, don't think of it as walang way to engage and walang way to build culture because every action that we do that is building culture.
So my follow-up question for that is, people kasi have a tendency to see that as micromanagement. Okay, so what is your opinion about that? So how do you rebut that?
Hmm. To me, it's all about norms. You
Mm-hmm.
have to talk to your team about how you manage and also ask them how they would like to be managed. Of course, it's not asking them and having to follow everything they say, but it's more of open up the conversation so you can both understand your style. Because I would argue that sending an agenda is not micromanaging. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe some other person, like what you said, might think that's too much. And so at the end of the day, there is no hard and set rule to answer that. Is it micromanaging or not? It's really more of you have to talk about it. Everyone has to know what is micromanaging for us, what is enough, what is okay, what is good.
Well, my take on that, because people need to know what is being discussed in a meeting, and they need to prepare for it, so that they can contribute something. Okay, they can form their
Mhm.
ideas already and contribute intelligently to the conversation. So that's why they need to prepare, because some
Yeah.
people, like, can quickly think of ideas, okay, and others,
Takes
okay,
time.
it
Hmm.
takes time for them to think of certain. I mean, it's not the same for everyone. So that's
Yeah.
why it's better to list down, the agenda. And
And yeah.
then,
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, please.
I was just gonna add, and also the level of detail of the agenda, right? Like that's something that will vary from team to team. And so
Mhm.
I super agree that yes, you have to have like an idea of why you're in the meeting, and also you have to kind of set the expectation. What is an agenda? How detailed is it supposed to be? What needs
Yes.
to be on there?
And with communication people, okay, so anything, okay, that's in conflict with something, you need to, before you discuss it with the group, okay, you need to iron it out with the person concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you don't call in people and then lambast people in that meeting.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The
That's not
reason that
inclusive. Yeah.
yeah, it's not inclusive, and it's also in general not good, because the point of being in a meeting is to be able to have some sense of cooperation and to connect with people. So that's the goal. I mean, that's how I define what a meeting is. So you don't expect people to be cooperative with you if you're just going to call them in a, a small room, and then that's where you start attacking them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yes.
if you so that's how you manage conflict. Okay, so that's conflict management. So things have to be dealt with before you go public, okay, or
Mm-hmm.
you trash it out with a bigger group. So, but I'm just trying to explain it, because I had somebody PM me this afternoon about it, something about the meeting not going in a certain direction, and then maybe before you invite 30 people, the organizers should you know agree on what to say
And who to invite?
first.
Because
Yeah, who
sometimes
to
do
invite?
you really need the 30 people there?
Yeah. So do you really need those attendees in Zoom? Okay. So that's like meeting management. Okay. So moving forward, so what is your so how will we be working? Okay. Towards, okay, so we don't know when this is going to end.
Right.
Okay, so the news said that there's a vaccine on May 2021. Okay, but towards going to the new normal, as they say. Okay, so what should we expect, or what should HR, okay, be fixing?
I guess like the very first and most obvious thing is individual realities are going to be even more different moving forward. And so if before you could kind of put everyone in a blanket, like, okay, you're all managers, you're all not managers, you're in this department, etc. Now we have to sort of also know, okay, who is working at home with a family, who is working at home na mag-isa lang siya. And so these are things that as a manager and as HR people, they could influence the conditions that someone is working in. And so being more attuned to those individual realities will just be more important than before. And then I guess also, given this new arrangement where, right, individual realities will be more salient, I would actually say there are more opportunities for inclusion to be infused in a workplace. And I say that because if you think about it, nowadays, if your company is open to remote work, maybe you don't have to hire just Metro Manila. Maybe you can
Mhm.
hire someone from very, very, very far away, right? Because they can just call in. Wala namang time difference, so easy lang. Or maybe you can hire someone you typically will not hire before, someone with different physical abilities. So things like
Mhm.
that. That's why I would say as HR, our opportunity now is to figure out how can we build inclusion more into the process. Things are changing, which means that there's opportunity for us to put in the changes we want. And yeah, and then I guess the third thing is really just we need a bigger push for all of these more inclusive practices. And I would say it's not just about inclusion. If you think about the other concepts that's related to it, it's also employee well being. Well being being physical, mental, which we know are very, very hot topics. So we do have to find a way to connect all of these topics and push more for them. So again, finding that leader who will help you push it, finding those projects that if you put together will actually make it more important for the company.
Yes. So moving forward, okay, so since our HR practitioners, okay, were able to attend all these webinars, it's time to integrate all these learnings, okay, and try to improve the workplace. So Ken, okay, so Ken, so Ken was involved in some efforts, okay, like charitable efforts, okay, during the typhoon.
Yeah, yeah. We did like a coaching program the other day.
Mhm.
It was we just thought about it, parang biglaan lang kasi. So
Mm.
parang
But you got
um
together a big group of coaches, right?
yeah, I posted, I think sa group din sa HR Shouts and Whispers, and my personal wall and my groups then parang anyone who wanted to volunteer to their insights, their services also to coach people, kasi we get to understand that there are lots of problems, and since I'm in a community of like hypnotherapists, that's NLP practitioners and coaches, sabi ko might as well connect with a lot of friends that want to help, and then let's just do a Facebook Live to
Mm,
actually help people with their problems, and at the same time if they have like it's if it's in their heart to actually give and donate for the people,
mhm,
send na lang sila sa isang bank account. So nakakapag-collect kami ng almost around 15K. Then
mhm,
kahit pa paano from all the 500 donations, and then we sent it na rin sa online Filipino freelancers kasi nakikita namin na yung community nila were like helping talaga dun sa mga Cagayan victims then and other locations eh. So successful naman. It was fun, and I think we're planning then, Christina, to do something for the HR
mhm,
communities. Nag-usap na kami ni George, update ka namin.
mm.
Idea
Oh,
pa lang
sure,
naman
sure.
siya. Yeah.
Yeah. So here in HR Shots, kasi we always have like,
Yeah.
ganyan kayo mag-usap, oh. Tapos
Biglaan, no?
we include everyone pa, di ba? Para alam na nila
Oo,
yun.
alam
It
niyo na.
sounds like a community in its true
Oo.
form.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, actually, so we're glad that we were able to shed some light, okay, on the culture, diversity, each other, because these are mysterious concepts, okay? Kasi yun nga, when well, kasi we just talk about it when there's like an issue about like some a female was fired, etc., etc., or a trans woman, etc. But it's beyond that. Okay, so right now it's very important to be inclusive because we want to be able to have also normal operations. Okay, kasi syempre normal operations, and we have to figure out a way that everyone has this opportunity to be able to do their work. Okay, especially at this trying time. So Elisha, so what will you be up to, okay, during the next week? So I think you have a busy schedule.
Yeah, so actually today we just wrapped up our month-long conference on diversity and inclusion. And I use the word conference lightly because it's really just every week we had a webinar on a different topic. And
Mhm.
actually these are all recorded and they are all up on our Facebook page. So if you are interested, please go ahead and look at those videos. It's not just me talking, I promise, para di ka magsawa. I have different resource speakers. Like for example, you mentioned earlier, Christina, the issue a few years ago about the trans woman and the company. So she's actually one of our guest speakers in
Oh.
the panel. So I
Mhm.
would suggest please go ahead and look at those recordings. The speakers there are experts in their field and they have a lot of research to share. So
Mhm.
we do have that, and the page is Elizha Corpuz Consulting. So that's where you can find it. And yeah, we regularly offer different workshops, different webinars, and also on-demand content pretty soon. So I think December we'll try to plan for the next year, because as you can imagine, a lot of things are in flux and you kind of have to take it as they come. But I think December is a good month to be planful for next year. So we'll take
Yeah.
that. But there are lots of things on the page currently up there now. So yeah, please do visit at Elizha Corpuz Consulting.
Yes. And Ken, okay, what's your schedule?
Yeah, for hypnotherapy, I think one of our good friends, Luigi Manyosa, will be doing a group therapy for anxiety, depression, and the likes. So it's called Breaking Bottlenecks. That's December 5. And I think December 19
Mhm.
would be the usual. Dr. Strix Toledo, one of the top productivity and coaches here in the Philippines, will be doing focus planning for 2021. Yeah, so if you're a fan of like mind hacking your way, focus blueprint will be, I think, December 20. That would be about creating habits and using a lot of mind technology like hypnosis and NLP to actually rewire your brain. That's December 20. Yeah.
Rewire. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. You
So it
know,
looks
you
like
know.
you're going towards the end. Is it the end of November? Hmm. Okay,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Almost.
yeah.
some
Almost,
almost.
almost,
Okay, so
almost.
malapit na nako. Okay, you know why I always say nako when November ends, because like 2 months from this date, I am going to celebrate my birthday. So tatanda na naman ako. That's why I always say
Yay.
nako.
Oh.
So
Advance happy
anyway,
birthday.
2 months advance. So anyway, so for me, okay, there's a Philippine HR assembly. So I'm one of the speakers there, together with one of our administrators, which is Tina Koang. Okay, and then we have other friends there who are also our fellow CPHR graduates. So that will be on November 26th, and it starts at around 8 o'clock. Okay, so I think Circa Logica and CPHR also like prepared for this event because they have like celebrity speakers, okay, to grace the event. So they should just like they can catch the details on our page, and it's on November 26th from 9 to I believe 5 p.m. So there. So and to our viewers, so thank you to for watching our FB live. Okay, so special thanks to Miss Eka Aquino, and then I think we have Dian Cot here. Okay, of OD Project, and Jing Sabala, and okay, so thank you for viewing our FB live today. And then if you have more questions or want to get in touch with our guests, so we've told you how to get in touch with her, and then you can just like comment, put your questions, more questions in the comment and in the comment section. So, so Elisha, Ken, I think if you haven't eaten your dinner, we can go ahead and have dinner.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
thank you so much. Thank you so
Salamat.
much, everyone. I appreciate being a part of this Facebook community.
All
Okay.
right.
Thank you, Elisha. And if there's anything, just like chat or send us a message.
Yeah,
Okay.
message,
All right,
message
thank
lang.
you so much. Nice meeting both of you. It's our first time to talk.
Yeah,
Yes.
like enjoy
Okay.
the
So
session.
enjoy the
Bye.
session as well. And for everyone, enjoy the rest of the weekend. Okay. Have your dinner and, have a peaceful sleep.
That's it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.